let's get started. So welcome everyone to the FinTech and Digital Banking Summit 2020. I hope all of you are comfy, as we just talked about, probably wearing collared shirts, maybe not, hanging out in your home or office, watching us on Zoom. So definitely appreciate you attending today. We've got an exciting number of sessions planned for the summit. And then obviously today we're going to be kicking things off right after I kind of tee things up with our first panel. And you see all the panelists here with their smiling faces. So just to talk to you a little bit about hash growth as a community. Hash growth is something that was created by MoEngage and was really a platform for thought leaders to talk with each other and involve others and really get into a dialogue around best practices, overcoming challenges that we see kind of advancing every day, especially as consumer behavior is so rapidly changing. So I certainly encourage everyone to keep tabs of hash growth. There's a lot of different educational resources, speaking opportunities, and everything else related to hash growth, and certainly invite you to check it out. And before we get started with the first panel, I want to tell you a little bit about MoEngage. And as one of your hosts, obviously we've got a number of other great companies too that have joined in, but just to give you some context for this first panel and honestly for the entire summit. As an intelligent engagement platform, customer engagement platform, really we think about things like segmenting users, personalization, analyzing data, and ultimately create the right kind of digital experience. And that's really what we're talking about today: is how do we take consumers, how do we orchestrate those digital experiences? How are our customers doing it, and how are the customers and vendors and providers doing it as well? And ultimately for MoEngage, right, we're delivering these experiences across messaging, right? So push notifications, in-app messages, email, SMS, all the different ways that we communicate with our customers in this day and age. And that's a little bit about what we do. So really customer engagement and communication platform for digital. So that's a little bit of intro on us. And my name is Aaron. I'm the VP of North America. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to our panel for them to introduce themselves, because we're going to talk about driving acquisition and product adoption in the contactless world. So let's jump in and let you guys introduce yourselves, and then we'll jump into the session.
All right. Hi, everyone. Good morning. This is Tausif. I'm mostly a content and design guy for the application, the product, the marketing side, right? And I head marketing and growth for Northloop. We are a neobank for Indians in India and abroad alike. So,
great, thanks, Tausif.
All right, I'll go next. Hey everyone, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. I'm Cam, short for Kamlesh Jayaraman. Been a product guy for over a decade, and most recently going back to Capital One in a bit to lead product there again. And Aaron, looking at I did messaging in the past world, and it's so important and so contextually relevant for what we're here to talk about. So excited for the conversation.
Yeah,
hello, everyone. I'm Bill Gerber. I head up the global enterprise practice at Adjust. I've been in the mobile industry for 5 years now, but my gray hair shows that I've been in the industry, maybe in the workforce for quite some time, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit. But Adjust has a product suite, a tool set that integrates into mobile apps and measures cross-channel performance. Everything we do is about empowering marketers. And what we do, job smarter and more secure. So that's what we do.
Thank you, Bill. Hey, everyone. I'm Matias Honorato, growth manager at the automated credit card debt manager. Employees that we analyze your financial profile, the fastest way for you to get out of debt. Before that, I worked at the student loan refi company, Earnest. So I've been in the FinTech space, specifically in growth, for the last a little over 4 years now. So super excited to be here and share some of that knowledge with all of you.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody. We can definitely jump in. I think, just to tee things up, Bill, we'll get started with you, but to me, what's interesting about, especially the environment we're in right now with digital is becoming so important. We're talking about, acquiring customers, getting them to adopt products, especially in the context of where we are today in the world. So I know you've got some perspective on some of the strategic thought around that. So I'll let you kick things off and we'll jump into it.
Yeah, sure. So again, I'm Bill Gerber. I've been in this industry for 30 years. Now I call that industry the performance management industry. And it's really been quite cyclical for the last 30 years. I was in ACDs and voicemail before voicemail was known, and in text-to-speech, speech recognition, web analytics, and with core metrics, and then acquisition by IBM. And that's when I joined I was the charter member of the Smarter Commerce team, Smarter Marketing team at IBM, where we developed a strategy around loyalty and how to engage the consumer and how personalization is core to everything that a brand should be doing with their clients and attempting to improve that relationship and build trust. And that's no different than what we're doing today. But I can tell you, the last 5 years, as I said, I was with Tune and went through an acquisition with Branch, and I ended up here at Adjust, because Adjust has something different, unique in the marketplace. And we can talk about that a little bit more. And I joined Adjust in January 2020. But then the world stopped. It literally stopped with COVID. And one can say that, everything stopped. And the way we looked at the world was different. And the way we looked at data was different. But what it did is it thrust mobile and mobile apps and in mobile engagement and our whole sector in the FinTech market space to the forefront. And I'm not sure that we were actually prepared for that, right? For several years, we've been going through growth and projections, but we never really had the audience at the C-suite. We really never had the attention, right, Aaron?
Yeah, well, I guess I was going to ask you, like you mentioned that what did you see break, right? When that's happened, right? I mean, from your perspective, what broke, and then ultimately what new behavior took hold as a result?
What broke was norms. What broke was the ability to actually go through the front door. The front door of your business became the mobile device. You literally had, from a mobile perspective, the pulse of the customer in your hand. And Adjust has some technology that literally or figuratively can tell you whether or not you have that phone in your right hand or your left hand.
Got it. Okay.
That's very important to a marketer, knowing whether or not they're working with a live body or with a bot or a bad actor. So that's literally what broke. And I think it broke the cycle. I think it broke everybody, but we were not prepared as a FinTech and I think a SME in the mobile space, a mobile marketer, to speak to the needs of the C-suite, to speak to the needs of the shareholder, to speak to the needs of the investors, so we get our proposition at the table. We need to focus on growth, market share growth, loyalty, shareholder value, risk mitigation, and we're talking about user acquisition, right? We're talking about, which is important. We're talking about cohorts and segmentation. That doesn't even translate at the leadership of a lot of these big brands.
Okay.
Yeah, I failed to mention that. I work with the biggest brands in the world.
It's it's definitely super interesting how COVID has accelerated this adoption of fintech apps. Like you could see saving apps, investing apps crushing it right now. Is there anything like a particular segment that at Adjust you have seen skyrocketing the last couple of months?
For sure. I mean, in the super app space, in the Neobank space is just skyrocketing. We have clients in that space that really across the board, we've seen a 59% increase during this COVID
Wow.
period, where the previous 2 years, and all these stats and this information is in a report that we just published day before yesterday, or yesterday morning. But that will be sent to you, and you'll have that available online. But that's with Just and Eptopia. But those industries, neobanks and commerce, anything to do that's driving this relationship, this loyalty through the mobile phone is where we've seen tremendous growth. And in, like I said, in this COVID period, the last few quarters, we've seen personally in sessions a 59% increase, and in session length an increase from of 8.9%. So it's now in excess of 8.35 minutes is the way our real-time statistics are telling us, and also the research through Reptopia. What's been your experience there, Matthias?
Yeah, for us, it's been a super challenging time. Definitely coming on the fintech space and in the lending side of things. Obviously, we haven't seen the growth that some other players on the savings or investing have seen. And we have had much more of an approach of taking care of our users, taking care of our customers, making sure that during these really hard times for them, we are there for them. So we have been creating these payment plans. We have been reaching out to make sure that people are able to continue to use Tally, continue to pay us back, and understanding that the current economic situation in the US is not the best right now. So really, we are trying to be as empathic as we can with our users. But it's interesting also, and just to call it out, that when we built Tally at the beginning, it was built with the knowledge and the expectations that we were going to go through a recession again. So in a way, our product and our algorithms were already prepared, and we had this recession baked into our models. So we know that there's a lot of players in the lending space that are suffering a lot from this current situation, but we have seen because of these taking that approach of preparing ourselves as we were building the product, that has been paying dividends this year for sure.
Nice.
Aaron, before I pass it back, I think what I want to end on is mobile is now mission critical. It is the front door to most businesses. And if you don't have a mobile strategy that is engaging, that is driving loyalty, that is achieving the goal of at the C-suite level to appease and satisfy the shareholders and investors, we're missing the boat. And so I would challenge this whole organization and our whole industry to level our game, to level up our narrative and speak to the goals of the C-suite.
Got it. Well, no, that's helpful, Bill. And I think, Cam, it's a great segue into some of the things that you think about, because you've got an interesting perspective, Cam. You're city in a city, right? You've got the traditional and you've got the digital, right? And I think that obviously Matthias and Bill are talking a lot about digital, but I guess tell us a little bit about how you kind of approach things, kind of given the fact you got a foot in kind of both worlds.
Yeah. And then before I jump in, I think one thing what Matthias said, I found to be really cool is how Tally is still, staying true to mission, helping customers, right? Because this is the same time that a lot of fintechs and some traditional banks have decided to not lend any money due to economic uncertainty. And it's fantastic to see that you guys are continuing to stay true to mission. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
Piggybacking off of something that Bill was saying, right? Even one of my hypotheses that came out wrong was, hey, you know what? People are going to be home, sitting in front of a computer more, so they are likely to use the website more, and that came out to be completely not true. The bigger shift has been like an accelerant in mobile usage than on web, right? So over the last 5 years, mobile app usage has incrementally been catching up to the web usage, but I think this whole COVID environment has slingshotted to exceed web usage. So just echo what Bill said, mobile is no longer mobile has never been an optional thing in the recent past, but now excelling at mobile is table stakes.
Yeah.
Right.
Here's a question though, Cam. Like a lot of the customers I talk to in FinTech, especially traditional banks or credit unions, I mean, mobile's kind of a checkbox. It's another channel.
Yeah.
And I get that, right? I mean, everybody's got, you got to manage your business, and there's certain costs that go with kind of taking on the experience yourself. But how do you talk? Because I think everybody agrees with the concept that mobile is important. But how do you, if you're at a place where you're kind of like, how do I get started, right? I've got organizational challenges. I've got tech stack challenges.
Yeah.
Do you have any perspective there on maybe what advice or takeaways you'd have for folks listening that are thinking like,
That's a great question, and that pain point for whoever in the audience you guys are facing, I resonate with that, having been through that a few times. So one thing, take it mobile and customer experiences, I kind of think of it as cupcake, birthday cake, and wedding cakes, right? You don't go off and build a wedding cake right at the get-go, right? You want to start with something small. At the same time, that's not an excuse to ship bad experiences. So you build a full holistic experience, however, it might be limited in how much you can do with it, but that's a full experience that you build.
I want to underscore that. So just to make it clear, and Tausef, I see you smiling because you are agreeing.
Yeah, definitely.
You just said don't ship bad experiences. It's okay to have more limited functionality. Is that correct?
Yeah, I agree.
But have the experience be okay. Yeah, you do, Tausif?
Yeah. So if you're say releasing out an MVP, right? There should it should still be fully functional, right? There's no excuse for an MVP to work badly for a user, right? So even if it's limited for its functionality, it should definitely be up to the mark, right? So that people have higher expectations, which you can obviously develop in the next update, and meet that level of expectation. That's what the user is. That's where the user is delighted, right?
Yeah.
And particularly again to underscore Bill's point, right? So you get very little chance at a first impression, so you want to make sure you do that well. And thankfully, I think FinTech financial services is a little bit more sticky than others, but even then, the threshold for bad experience is still very low. So I think building those and developing those, be it on the product side or on the marketing side, like you have to be really aware of that. And
I have a question. Capital One, right? Institutional, well-known brand.
Yep.
This is FinTech. This is mobile. This is in a neobank kind of environment now with COVID. How has that impacted you directly, your organization directly? And how has the regulation and the privacy and the data residency of this industry impacted you in comparison with others in the market?
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic question, Bill, and a few hard-hitting points there as well, right? I think one thing, Capital has been very public about this. Capital One as an entire organization, right? It's like a massive organization, has been in this digital transformation journey for quite a while now, like I think 5 years now, where as a company, we're taking the approach of rebuilding everything from the ground up, right? So I think as the CEO put it, we want to be a tech company that is doing banking and not a banking company that is doing tech, right? So that's the approach that we've taken. And coming on the other side, right, 100% on the cloud, just as you would expect any new fintech or any new neobank that's building infrastructure from the ground up today would function, right? That's the journey that Capital One's on. And that has really helped, even like I think last year, like CCPA came around, right? We had to hit CCPA regulatory requirements. And as a company, Capital was able to do that extremely fast. Like I was certainly wowed at how quickly we were able to mobilize resource and comply with all of the requirements in record time. And that's all because we were rebuilding all of our technology stack from the ground up, all of our data stack, right? Moving off of our data centers, moving 100% onto cloud. And also with that comes the benefit, now we can stream data, right? And that leads to all of the technology that Bill, you were talking about, even MoEngage offers, right? Where you can consume that in real time and build kind of machine or AI built experiences in real time that's hyper personalized to you. right?
Mhm.
Like Amazon, Google, all of these guys, when you search or when you go to the homepage, it's an experience that's built for you. And I think, and some of the neobanks have also done that, right? I've spent some time with Revolut as well as a super app, and we're able to do that. And I think that's where the industry is going, right? You become more hyper personalized. We're able to balance that innovative customer experiences with that trust that is so intrinsic to a financial institution.
Got it. No, that's helpful. That's helpful. Well, I think, Tausif, you've got some perspective on, what traditional banks can learn from
Yeah, definitely.
from
So,
neobanks. I think that's definitely a good segue into that, right? So
yeah, so Cam has been talking about neobanks, right? Bill, you too. And so what happens is when a traditional bank, tries to get into this journey of transformation from changing from the traditional point of view to a technical point of view, to a technological point of view, they miss out on a lot of things. Because one is they have one stigma in everyone's mind, which has been associated with that kind of a bank because they have a history, right? So what they can do probably is they could actually use their history, find the emotion that they were based on for years. Why did people trust them? Was it their customer service, all right? Was it their prompt response? And taking that feeling from people back from their own, community. They reach out to them. They understand what kind of values they were being loved for years, and then they base their whole product around that one emotion or value, right? So there's a consistency, right? So that whenever if someone downloads the traditional bank app, it's not like all over the place, and they still feel home because they have experienced that already, and now the app continues that with the new generation. But a lot of times, because obviously it's very challenging, traditional banks might need to have a shift, right, in their internally as well as external, right? Because you cannot reflect it if you're not internally, making that shift in your organization, right? So that's how a traditional bank should actually, look into itself. Why have they been successful? How did they gain that trust over time? And then use it to their power. And on the other side, then there are neobanks, there are challenger banks, which have started from day one with that culture, right? And they have been vocal about it as well. That's something which really helps in acquiring customers, right? And then there's personalized approaches and everything, right? Because we see in the market, all right, Aaron, we see in the market that there are, say, low income profiles, right? People who are not earning that much. We see there's a racial inequality. There's a racial gap when it comes to, say, the income statements of people, right? So we see that there's a lot of different segments, and we can actually personalize our messaging, the way we reach out to them. Where are we reaching out to them, right? Where can we find our consumers? So that's one approach that really can, work out when acquiring customers.
Yeah.
Hey, Tausif, I have a question for you.
Definitely.
Sorry. So yeah, the question is, what have you seen that like a successful tactic to build that trust, leveraging your own internal data? So whether it is you're a bank that is trying to again capture that trust from your customers or new customers, or you are a neobank that is building that trust for the first time. What have you seen that is successful for these companies?
So let's say like we have a user, right, who is, say, into investing as well as has an account, right? So like we could use that to our advantage to, communicate to that user, give them value in terms of the product they're using, right? So avid investors are definitely, more into, say, savings, using their money to the most of value, right? So we can definitely make segmentation of our consumers based on the data that we have, right? And from the culture they're coming from, definitely. That's a big take, but obviously that's undervalued at a lot of times. And then we could probably, reach out to them and devise a strategy around a framework around the same, right?
Actually, Matthias, like what you shared at the beginning, right, where you guys are still continuing to stay true to the mission and building that social proof around that, like that goes a long way in building trust with your customers and future prospects as well, right? I actually want to underscore something that Tausif, that you mentioned, like also looking internally, right? Oftentimes when you think of, okay, you know what, we want to change everything, you look at, okay, what new technology you need to adopt. But even if you give the best, even if you equip the company with the best technologies, the people who are building these experiences, right? It's your product teams, your engineering teams, it's your C-suite, right? It's also about changing that internal perspective and that internal narrative. And like Bill said, like, you know, right now seems like we're getting a larger voice in the C-suite, in the boardroom for these kind of experiences, right? So I love that you mentioned focusing internally and changing the organizational culture to reflect who we want to be.
I think that's very important, Kim, and that was kind of the genesis of the question I asked you about process, about institutional maturity, about industry brand protection. You know, one of our clients, Robinhood, also is skyrocketing, but they don't have the same process, the same restrictions that a Capital One may, and the brand risk that maybe Capital One may have. So that was the genesis of my question previously.
Yeah.
Hey, Tausif, can you playing off of Matthias's question, I think the tactics too are very interesting. Do you have anything that you could advise somebody to start doing? Let me give you an example. Like you mentioned trust. We did a webinar a month ago with somebody who said that educating the end user on why there were changes to their accounts, simple things like I got a note from my bank that says your interest rate has gone from this to this, right, in your savings account. And there was no explanation. It was just like, here you go, too bad, right? And the outcome of that webinar was like, well, hey, if like what the panelists suggest is like, well, explain why, so the end user knows that you're not just, somebody at the board level didn't say, we need more money or we need less money, whatever, right? So I think there's certainly there was a great takeaway around this concept of like, hey, if we can educate users with every communication or every change to their account, or every change, you're going to build up that trust. Do you have any other things like that something as simple as like changing the text in an email, or doing something differently that people can start doing like today, right?
Right. Yeah. So obviously the way we communicate to people is more important than ever before, right? Yeah. With the advancement of technologies and the AI coming into play, right? Being human today has actually a lot of importance than ever before, I'd say so. And I'm definitely sure that in the coming time, being human would have even more value, right? So even the text that you're getting, you have a lot of questions in your mind, and it's probably a no reply kind of a mail or text, right? So you cannot go on asking them, or you have no way to reach out to them, right? Yeah. So being transparent and being wholesome, we have to come out to the customer. We have to inform them about everything, what's going on inside as well, right? Because that develops a relationship between the customer and the brand. And a lot of times the customer is actually very much important for the coming roadmap as to what are we looking for, what should we go on with, right? Everything, every answer lies with the customer, right? Because everything is for them by the end of the day, right? A brand might do everything right, but if they are not bothered about the customer, then probably they'll have no relationship with them, right? So transparency has a huge role today, right? And engaging with people is certainly more important than ever before, right? Yeah. So it should be a human interaction, definitely, when it comes to say push notifications, right, and emails. So for an example, I use these tools like marketing tools, general marketing tools, right? And I had an ID on one for more than 365 days. And then I made a newer one. All right. After a couple of weeks, I started getting emails on, and I get emails on both, right? But both the IDs, one being a year old one and a new one, had similar emails every day at the same time. Yeah, that does not even make sense, right? Because you should at least understand that one user has been there with you for a year, has experienced the whole product, and you're still pitching the same things. And it was a marketer. So if they aren't doing it right, then I don't know who is, right? So that's very important to personalize the message, understand the user journey, where the user stands, and accordingly, answer everything that probably pops up. All the what ifs.
Do you utilize, I'm sure you do, A/B testing, and how does that work for you? Do you have multi-touch attribution, and real-time feeds that are giving you this kind of intelligence? I'm
Definitely.
just curious how
Yeah.
you're using that.
So yeah, obviously A/B testing is like a huge part of this, right? So we can always test, and I'm definitely sure that you would get the same results, right? If you're mute, like Aaron said, he got a text which had probably no explanation, right? So that was kind of mute, being emotionless, right? We're just putting it out. Hey, this is this, right? On the other hand, if you're being, say, like we all know, we might have heard like about Monzo, right? They have this huge community that they reached out to, and they did it for everything. And today, with the ease of opening a bank account, say with a new bank, Challenger Bank, whatever bank, right? So the process has become so easier that retaining customers has more value than acquiring customers, right? Because that's everything.
Yeah.
I've seen people migrate to other banks for bank accounts for $100 bonus. So any random day, someone would come up in the market and offer $100, and your customer's gone. So you need to have that value, that this person is getting $100 value every day, right? Because that's what I keep it at the back of my mind now, because it is so easy now, right?
Yeah.
And just going quickly back to the point of A/B testing, I think at the end of the day, the speed at which you're releasing new tests and shipping new features, at the end of the day, greatly improve your chances of succeed on the long term, right? So I think it's, for everyone on the audience, it's super important to start thinking about that, creating those frameworks, creating those processes that could, at the end of the day, improve your chances of hitting the goals that you have on your organization.
Yeah. Yeah, Matthias, I mean, you definitely talk about, I mean, it's a habit, it's a change in habits a lot of times, right? Especially if you're going traditional and trying to get more progressive. I mean, you've got kind of old, bad habits, if you want to call them, but really just old habits that aren't serving you to break. And it definitely requires new systems and new ways of thinking. So
yeah, 100%. And I think this breaks down a little bit into the question of that we do at Tally pretty regularly, that we try to define it every quarter, every 6 months, which is how do we grow? How does our product grow? And I think by answering that and breaking it down in smaller pieces, we can have more tactical actions or tactical frameworks to go after new acquisition channels, to go and solve some retention issues or engagement problems that we might be seeing, and even help us structure in a better way our monetization engine. Yeah. So
take us through that process. That'd be great. So.
Yeah, so we usually break this down into 3 different pieces. I think the first one is really connected to what we have been talking about, which is when we are building products and when we are building new features, we are always trying to align these to what are our customer goals, and where, for example, now in COVID, what are our customers going through on their lives. So we were very thoughtful when we started to build Tally, to have the company mission, which is make people less stressed and better off financially, and our business model and our revenue engine really driven by positives, incentives, and alignment with our user needs, which you can see that we only make money if we help you save money. And basically by aligning our financial incentives of the company with the financial goals of our users, we have a structure, a way on how we develop new products and how we develop new tests that is always based on making the right choice for the user. I think that's a really foundational piece of when we ask ourselves how we can continue to grow. The second point is thinking about or redefining our perception of product market fit. And what I want to say with this is, when your company might go through different moments where the definition of product market fit might change. So the cohort of users that you acquired 6 months ago or a year ago are really different from the users that you are acquiring today or that you're going to be acquiring in a year from now. And that basically push you, or you should be pushed to think about how I can serve and better produce products for this new cohort of users, which translate in how I can redefine my product market fit based on this expansion that I'm going through. And I think that has allowed us to really be thoughtful about, at each moment in time, how Tally it's doing with our users, and if we are finding product market fits with these new cohorts of users, which is interesting because by defining or redefining your product market fit, you're also redefining your acquisition strategy. You're redefining your re-engagement or your retention strategy, and even you might be redefining a new business model. So I think that's something that we constantly ask ourselves at Tally. And lastly, the third point, and it's something that I've been pushing really, really hard this year, is to start thinking about growth from the perspective of product, and how growth is driven by your product and not that you're forcing growth into your product. And I think this touched a little bit in what Cam was talking about really identifying what are these delightful moments of your users with your product. And once that you know, okay, these are like 1 or 2 moments of delightfulness, how I can engineering now organic growth loops, so people can either refer friends after they have experienced that, or they can talk about it with their family, with their partners, with their friends, etc. But really be thoughtful about how these delightful moments in your product experience can actually maximize and generate these organic growth loops that are coming within the product itself.
Got it.
Well, Matthias,
I just underscore.
that's incredible. And I want to, would love to get that into a case study, right? I mean, I know we need to get that into a case study. So
let's do it.
I think, underscore that product-led growth component, right? I think when companies are small, you don't have those millions of dollars to pump into marketing. So you really dig in on that, hey, what does that product-led growth look like, and build that growth engine into the product itself. And I think one thing that the question you asked Joseph, Aaron, was what can traditional banks also learn from fintechs? It's to go back and rediscover what that product-led growth looks like, right? Regardless of what size you are, that the product-led growth engine should be at the core of all of your experiences.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. Hey, I know we want to open up for questions here in about 5 minutes, but I think that it would be really great to hear from all of you, maybe a system or a process that you set up inside your organizations to try to drive progress or something. I mean, I don't know if you guys have any stories, even if there was something like, hey, this is something I did and it worked really well and had a good business outcome. I mean, Tausef, I'll start with you. Anything that you can share that you've tried that's really worked well for you or surprised you?
So I did this project. It was for not for this North Loop, right? But it was like sort of a freelance consulting project sort of a thing for an application which has immense users, all right? And what the issue was that they were designing a new sort of a notification panel or something of that sort, right? So let's just get back to banking. Think of it like, let's say you have a credit card bill pending and you have a bank app, right? And in your app, you have a tab which is dedicated to your credit card. So probably you get a notification or something that your credit card bill is pending, right? But you open up your app, you go to that tab, and then you clear out that payment. Instead, what you could do is you can make the process effortless. That's what Snapchat did when it has to, when you open up Snapchat, it directly goes to your camera. So it implies that it is a picture sharing app, right? So whenever I have to share a picture, I just open up Snapchat because it directly goes to my camera, and the second tap is like the picture sent, right? So 3 taps from opening the application to sending the picture. Exactly the same way, if you have a credit card bill pending, you have to make it effortless so that the person opens up the app, it should be over there in front of him that, all right, your bill is pending. No matter where the credit card option is on the application, it should be upfront, right? So as time grows and people get familiar with their applications day by day, right? It is very important that we have this sort of a design similarity between the apps a person is very much used to, right? Making the process effortless, and obviously understanding that time has exactly the same value as money has today, right? In a lot of circumstances. So either we save people time, money, and somehow gamify the process so that we deliver rewards and people are tied up, because retention is way more important than acquisition any day.
Got it. Okay. Hey, Matthias, anything you can share?
Yeah, I'm gonna go the opposite way. So I'll share some of the things that haven't worked for us and some of the learnings. So I think there's 2 points that I want to touch on. The first one is thinking that growth and like doing that work to increase either retention, engagement, or acquisition has to do with building more features. And we have realized that actually that doesn't solve the problem. And going back to what Cam was mentioning about product-led growth, is you have to be really ruthless when you're building new features on how much value they're adding to your user, how are they improving the customer experience, and how you can leverage this new interaction or this new experience for that user to drive growth. If you're not able to answer how a new feature is driving growth for your company, I would really push hard on rethink about it, restructure it, give it a second thought. And then the other point would be about this concept of always optimizing. And I think we growth marketers, we tend to get into this trap where we are trying to optimize on local maximums. So it's not only about like optimizing, but also like asking yourself that foundational question of how might change the experience to increase engagement, and add up like a small experiment that I can run with that learning ahead of me, instead of like always trying to optimize for those harder parts on the funnel.
Okay, no, that's helpful. Thank you. Cam, anything to add?
Yeah. I think one thing I'd say is, Joseph, you mentioned time and effort. I think there's also a third part to it, which is relevance, right? I think today FinTech is becoming embedded in so many other services that you traditionally would not associate with FinTech, right? And as such, the market is getting crowded, so relevance becomes really key. And relevance in terms of like, what are you communicating, how are you communicating, all the way down to, this is something that we did at Cap One, is what emotion and tones are being perceived by your customers when you communicate to them across a variety of channels, right? Of own channels, particularly I'm talking about like your push notifications, your emails, your SMS. Can you go down to the level of optimizing the sentiment, the tonality of the content that you're putting in addition to the what and the why, right? To make it really resonate with your audience. That's the one incremental bit I would add.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. Bill, anything from you?
Well, coming from a technology provider, right? We provide the tools that help you measure and measure the past, help you measure the present through real-time metrics, and then help you predict the next best action. We help you automate, so you can spend your next marketing dollar better than the last. And we also help you protect and protect your brand, protect you from bots, protect you from bad actors. But I think all of you have touched on customer experience and ensuring that you're driving loyalty of your brand with your consumer. So I would say I'd probably touch there. What are we doing specifically in my practice? We do have a software suite that helps you drive this performance, but we're also now bolting on a services deliverable for our largest accounts to help drive efficiency, to help drive an assessment of where that pain may be, how to align those business objectives with your broader engagement strategy focused on mobile. So I would say that's what we're doing a little differently, and that's what my practice is doing at Adjust. And one shameless plug here, we did just release this yesterday, and it has a lot of good information. So you'll get it sent out to you.
Yeah, we'll check it out. Well, great. Well, let's turn it over. I've got a bunch of Q&A that's got here. I'll throw this at you guys here. And I see they got this cool like voting thing that people can vote. So hey, everybody who's listening, vote on the question, because that's what bubbles up to the top here on my screen. So question for the panel. We probably got time for maybe 2 or 3 questions. First one here is, what elements within Cohort do you look at to decide if you are getting a new type of customer and thus should change engagement strategy within this new cohort? Thanks. Anybody want to jump on that? I'll paste it into our chat too, just so you guys can see it in writing.
I think I'll take a stab at it, right? It kind of depends on, like, what do you start with? How did you define your first cohort? Right? Typically, is it demographic based, geographic based, income based, and so forth. And let's say, building audiences is easier to start building concentrations, right? And if you see this audience pop up from an area where you're not concentrated, and that area starts to grow, and across any of this, right, demography, geography, income, whatever you use to measure, right, that becomes your first signal to say, hey, you know what, something that I did not anticipate or want to happen, or purposefully I did not make this happen, this is happening. So there's an organic shift that's going on. And then you go into marketing, product, whatever, you go into a discovery mode to say, where are they coming from and what are their needs that aren't fulfilled? And you start building towards expanding that cohort. Now you'd have multiple spikes typically, right? Not just one. So, and then you decide where you find the most optimal potential and double down in those areas.
Okay.
And like Matthias, this might be right in your ball game as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think you pretty much covered everything as we do it. We tend to look at new cohorts based on, also we take into consideration for these new cohorts, where in their life they are and like their life moments. So we might see increase of people that are trying to buy a house because of the current rates in the market. So they might have different goals from people that were more focused on, for example, paying down their credit card so they could buy a wedding ring or an engagement ring. So we try to kind of like start looking at the cohorts, not only from demographics, geo, and the information that we get, but also from trying to understand where in their life they are and how we can better support that process that they're going through.
Cool. No, thank you guys. So I got another good one here that seems to be getting a lot of traction with the chat. What can you do to optimize towards user experience, and what are some metrics you can look at to understand where there are areas of improvement?
Well, I'll jump in first and say, real-time data is extremely important. Having data accessible. Having data accessible, having it able to enrich maybe your own BI platform, making sure that data is accurate is integral to all of these decisions. So that would be my response, and from a technology provider point of view.
Yeah. So, Cam, are you going forward?
No, go ahead, Joseph. I think
I saw you jumping in. So yeah, so obviously there are funnels for the users, right? Where they're going, what is the flow, what does it look like? Obviously every app has a different kind of a flow, right? And you have different expectations or metrics for your own self, but definitely the drop-off points are very, very important. And there could be, as we talked about, A/B testing for what works, right? Which sort of changes actually takes the user to the last point of the user journey, right? And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Awesome.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I wanted to basically say experimentation as well, right? That's the one thing you can start doing to optimize experience. And if you can, and to Bill's point, right, if your infrastructure is set up where you can do real-time multivariate testing, it's like definitely go there. And again, it's piggybacking off of what Bill said, like if your data infrastructure is set up, you can enrich in real time, you can process in real time, then you can really orchestrate machine experiences, right? Have the machine orchestrate the customer journey a little bit based on some set of rules. You don't want to completely go off the rails. Yeah. So if you're set up in that way, that's fantastic. If you're not, then start with at least basic A/B testing while you're investing to transform your data landscape, right? That's just so foundational.
Yeah. And just to add one quick thing here, and it might be like going back to the old days, but I think once that you have defined the problem and the learnings that you want to have, like following steep blank steps, like get out of the building, go and talk with your customers. At the end of the day, like you're going to find so much invaluable information by just talking with them that even though that is not going to help you maybe to test it at scale, but at least it's going to give you a good hunch of how you can keep improving that experience.
Yeah, good point. Well, hey, I think we got time. We got about 2 more minutes left. I just pasted this question in the chat with the panelists. You guys we can jump on this one too, and then we can wrap. But essentially, somebody asked, what are some of the best practices mobile first and traditional banks can implement when it comes to segmenting their users to increase engagement and deliver the right messages?
All right.
I'll start with that one. Only I think to me, it's just because a lot of what we do is a lot of it comes down to collect as much data as you can, right? About about their behavior, about like how they interact with you, what products they use. I mean, the example I give all the time is, we've got folks in our company that are customers of big banks, and they show me like, oh, hey, I just got this email that says, hey, use mobile banking check deposit. It's like, I've been using it for 5 years, right? So for example, like having a little checkbox somewhere in their profile, somewhere in some database that says they already use mobile banking, like don't send them an email. So I think any data that you can get that talks about, again, things that they're doing, products that they interact with, the way they want to be communicated with, that data is going to allow you to segment. So get your hands on whatever data you can that's allowed, and make it work for you. So I'll pass it back to you guys if there's anything else you want to add.
I don't think I've used QR codes more in the last, I don't think the general public knew what QR codes were prior to COVID. And now, I mean, we walk into a restaurant, QR codes are everywhere. I mean, we were doing apps 4 years ago with QR codes, and it's just like, it's finally catching on. Simplicity, user experience, intelligence, real time. I mean, mobile is at the forefront, and it's not going away.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great point to end on, Bill. So I want to thank all of you for joining today, and thank all those in attendance, and for the super awesome questions. Thank you. And you guys have an awesome rest of your day. And take care. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, everyone.